Hi guys, welcome back to another week of Art Life. In this week's episode, we are working and experimenting with the Tunbridge Wells collection of oil paint, the new range from Michael Harding Oils, just out. So these are 10 brand new colours that we're going to be working with today, exploring, and they're part of this year's release of 40 new oil paints Michael Harding are releasing to celebrate 40 years in trade. So firstly, let's get stuck in with the neutral grey N7, which looks like a very warm, consistent grey for artists who are constantly mixing up grey and need one just ready in the tube. It looks quite like achromatic. Let's have a go. So very opaque. Just stretching out that colour a bit. It already feels quite buttery. Quite high pigment, which we can always expect from Michael Harding. If I mix that with a titanium white or ivory black, because those colours are already in the grey, it would just basically play with it. If you needed a darker grey or a lighter grey, you could just tonally play with that with the neutral grey. So I'm kind of more interested to see if we could maybe make it slightly warmer, if we maybe added a rose madder, get a more violet colour tinge to it, and maybe even play with adding a gold, see if we can make it greener. I'm a landscape artist, so I'm always trying to explore colours I could actually use in my practice. So just rose madder and quin gold here. Just colours I had kind of handy. So yeah, if we just explore a little bit, just taking the colours. So I'm not sure how much colour to add. Let's just start with a little bit here. So it's a very small bit of rose madder. I think it's reacting to the sandiness of that neutral grey. It already feels very warm. I think you can make a really beautiful kind of soft tonal. That would be lovely in skyscapes in the clouds for those warm, stormy autumn evenings. The smallest bit of rose madder has just made that grey so much pinker. Lovely. Now for just for fun, let's try a bit of quin gold. I don't know what's going to happen. Oh wow. Okay, so immediately it's gone like very green almost. But again, it could be quite lovely for sort of dappled sort of sunlight landscape. So yellow. I think it reacts much more to the yellow than it did to the red. It must be quite a sandy tone in that neutral grey. And I could keep playing with different blues and everything, but I think for now it just feels like it really tones down, makes a lovely buttery base for any kind of muted colours I'd need to mix really. So neutral grey. On to the next colour. So next we're going to start with phthalo blue red shade, which is phthalates are always very transparent. I've not worked with phthalo blue for a while. I do have a phthalo blue here to sort of compare it to as well. So we can have a play. Again, high mass pigment content. It looks like such a dominant colour. So it feels quite warm. What I'm going to do is I do have a phthalo blue lake, so I might compare it to the phthalo blue lake, and I might also just experiment a bit with a warm white just to like lighten the colour and see if we can get a better idea of what we're working with. So see already the tiniest bit of the phthalo blue red shade. It feels warm. It feels like a warm summer blue. Perfect for this time of year. You would not need much of this blue if you were doing a skyscape. The smallest bit would create the loveliest, richest deep blue. I mean, that looks like the loveliest blue from a summer day. Amazing. Now just to compare it with the blue lake, just to see if there's any subtle differences. So see, the blue lake's much more turquoise and sort of deeper, whereas I think that phthalo blue red shade is much more suited to a sort of English summer sky, not so Mediterranean as the blue lake. Okay, so next colour, Turner's Yellow. I'm quite excited about this colour because this is a colour that I use a lot in my practice. I didn't know that it was patented in the 19th century by James Turner. I assumed the name of Turner's Yellow was because, like, JMW Turner, who I love, loved yellow, so it was a Turner's Yellow. No, it was actually patented by James Turner. Who knew? So it is, yeah, historically a lead chloride pigment, which is now obsolete. So this is the only way you'd be able to get that historic 19th century yellow. So buttery. I think immediately you see it's just so vibrant. Actually, I'm going to need some more of that because I'm going to play with this one. So I think this colour is incredibly sort of milky and earthy for a yellow. So if you use a lot of cadmiums, I think this one would be quite a great one for you. Let's add a little bit of white and see what happens when we add some white. If we lighten up that colour. Just like liquid sunlight. Oh, it's delicious. I love it. Buttery sunlight. Now, let's see, I wonder what we could add to it just to like experiment, since we are doing an experimental sort of play. A complementary colour to yellow is violet. So if we maybe add a lilac or a lavender, I might add a manganese violet just because that's something I usually work with, just to see, as one of my favourite violets to use, and just see what happens when we add a little bit of the Turner's Yellow with its complementary colour of violet. I think we're going to get a lovely brown. Actually, it's so strong, look, that violet's hardly touched it. We're going to need a lot more. So this is immediately a beautiful sort of earthy brown, which I think would be perfect for sort of warm landscape. Portraiture, actually, I feel like there's some like lovely base tones here. Just that tiny bit of manganese violet. See, it just feels like so buttery and rich. I think it's such a lovely yellow. I think it can go into sunlight. I think it can go into more earthier tones. I think you get some lovely greens with it as well, mixing in some of the blues, which we could try as well. Okay, because I like this colour so much, I do want to try another colour with it. So I'm just going to get rid of, hang on, I'll leave the manganese violet there so remember what I mixed it with. Leave the white there, just so I know that that's the light version of the colour. Let's make some space. I think we should just see if we can make a nice green with it. Why don't we use the phthalo blue red shade just now, just to see for fun, with some of the Turner's Yellow, what kind of green we'd get. Oh, beautiful teal, look at that. That would be a fantastic base for any green, if you're particularly fond of green. I think that's gorgeous. So yeah, definitely two very different colours there. Such variety from a yellow. Okay, so the next colour we're going to be trying is the moss green. I feel like I'm in the mood for greens after that lovely Turner's Yellow green. Oh, okay, so immediately much looser, much more transparent as a colour, which I quite like. It's not so stiff. add a little bit of white and see what happens when we... So we take a little bit of white here. Okay, just to sort of really get an understanding of the colour. You see how adding that white just completely changes the opacity. You've kind of lost some of that transparency, but then you get this gorgeous kind of sagey leaf. I mean, the highlights of this would be wonderful doing kind of that green landscape colour. Changes dramatically with a tiny bit of white. What if we added, just to see, I'd like to see it with some Quin Gold, because it's such a transparent colour. If we mix it with another transparent colour, just to see how it would act. Not that much, I mean, much warmer, you can't really tell. I might have to get my brush just to have a little look. Again, very rich colours. So if we just get some of them Michael Harding Miracle Medium. Ooh, got quite a lot there. I just want to sort of stretch it out and just see what happens. Say if I was painting with this colour. Oh, like so yellow. Like the smallest bit of linseed oil there. It's got so much light. If you did a glaze of this over a painting that was kind of feeling a bit flat, I think it would just come alive. It's so interesting how it changes when you add the kind of oil medium as well. Let's just do that as well with the green without any yellow. So rich. Okay. So as a transparent colour, I think it was really helpful just to kind of like add a little bit of the oil just to see what happens. It's so loose, so flexible as a colour. But then again, when you add the white, it becomes very opaque and you get a lovely, rich kind of mossy green. I think that's so perfect for autumn as well. You could do these like sun-drenched sort of forests, or it could be quite good for botanical paintings as well. It feels like it has a very beautiful kind of glaze finish, maybe with dama varnish. Oh, I'll explore a bit more with that one in time. I think it was quite helpful using the oil. So let's just give it a bit of a wipe. Okay, next colour. Let's use the Vivid Blue, which I'm very excited about. I did have a little play with this, and its coverage, the smallest bit of this colour, completely went so far on a painting I did earlier this week, covered the whole thing. So yeah, I think it would be the closest to a cobalt teal shade. Again, summer, a very different tone to the phthalo blue red shade. It feels a lot more green, like the most beautiful shade of turquoise if we stretch it out. High pigment quality again. I have got a cobalt teal just to compare it, because I feel like it's the slightly cheaper option for anyone who's on a budget with paint like me, who's always using far too much. So the cobalt teal, let's just explore this. So if the cobalt teal feels slightly darker, if we see it comparing it, start to switch it out. So we add some white just to see what's going on. So with the Vivid Blue, again, it's so rich, like the white's barely touching it. Feels like I used too much. You probably needed a fraction of the amount I used to see some colour difference. But then just seeing in comparison to, say, the cobalt, I really don't think there's hardly any difference in that. Maybe the cobalt's slightly more kind of turquoise. But I love how the Vivid Blue just feels so soft. Let's mix it with a complementary colour just to get a bit of contrast. Okay, so let's get rid of the cobalt. We don't need that anymore. I'm going to mix it with Brilliant Orange. We're going to get to this colour next. But I just want to see what happens. So I want to see what happens when we mix it with an orange. Ooh. Now that is a beautiful shade. Kind of grey blue. Couldn't be more different to the vivid blue. The orange has just kind of toned it down and made it so rich. I think that would couple really well with greens or skyscapes. Again, going into portraiture would be a lovely undertone for those kind of flesh tones. And you wouldn't think for such a vivid blue that it would have such a kind of rich toned down grey. I think that's really interesting. Lovely. Okay, so while we're using the Brilliant Orange, let's carry on with the Brilliant Orange. So I might just steal some of this orange here. Brilliant Orange. Now this feels very peachy. It's incredibly fluorescent, but we've already seen that we can do wonders with it. First of all, I'd probably like to steal a little bit of this white and just experiment what happens when we do add a bit of white. Okay, so it's immediately gone quite peachy, quite buttery. Ooh, I might make that even whiter actually, even lighter, still a bit more of this white. No, we're not using it. So the smallest bit of that Brilliant Orange has made them almost like a delicate pink. Looks very pink. Okay, so I'd like to compare the Brilliant Orange to the Permanent Orange, because the Permanent Orange is what I use the most. So I'd like to see if this colour could replace, could replace it for me. Now the Permanent Orange is much rosier. If you mix it with the Brilliant Orange and the white, let's just steal a little bit more white from over here. So the Permanent Orange is much redder now that I'm seeing it mixed in, whereas I think the Brilliant Orange keeps that kind of integrity of the orange. So there must be a lot more yellow in it. That's really interesting. Okay, so you can see, comparing the Brilliant Orange to the Permanent Orange that he's just released out, it's much more yellow, it's much more peachier, less rosy, which I think is more exciting for particularly using more yellows in my practice, which I want. But you can just see the difference. Let's just see what happens when we add a little bit of lavender. See a little bit of lavender with the Brilliant Orange. Suddenly you've got a really, really rich brown, like sandy brown, not too red. Comparing that to our manganese violet and our Turner's yellow, you can see a lot more of the kind of earthier orange tones than with the yellow, which kind of lost its personality to the violet a little bit. So that's amazing to see the difference between a little bit of the Permanent Orange and a little bit of lavender. How much variation you get. I think it warms up everything. Brilliant Orange. Okay, that's really nice to know. So next colour, let's try the lavender, since we used that with the Brilliant Orange. Now the lavender I have tried with the watercolour set that Michael released, but I haven't tried it in oil form, so I'm very excited to see kind of how this works. Let's just stretch that out for a second just to see that lovely opaque, rich, cool purple. It looks lovely next to the peach of the Brilliant Orange. So let's do some things. Let's lighten it up and just see how it goes with some white, but let's also play maybe with the Turner's yellow, a complementary of purple. So first of all, if we just scoop the colour ready. So if we mix, first of all, some white, so we can just to see what happens. Oh my gosh, it's so rich that I did not use enough white. So you really don't need much. You really don't need much pigment of the lavender to get a really buttery, pale, cool purple. It makes me think of lavender fields. It is just the colour of lavender. It really is that botanical. I mean, it's beautiful. You can just see that with the white. But I'm really excited to see what happens when we mix it with yellow. So this is the Turner's yellow. Ooh, so you have suddenly a gorgeous grey. Really warm. Maybe if we had a little bit more of the lavender just to cool it down even more. Oh, that's delicious. There's so many ways you could use this just with the Turner's yellow. It's a lovely base kind of shadow colour. Oh, it's gorgeous and so different. Yeah, so you can really kind of like play with it. Right, next colour. Since we're on the purples, let's try the wisteria, which already feels much rosier than the cool lavender. Oh, it almost looks pink. Again, I've experimented with the wisteria in the watercolour set, but I've never used it in oil. Oh, it's very warm compared to compare that to the coolness of the lavender. So different. Let's steal a bit of white and just see what happens when we lighten it up a little bit. It really keeps its integrity. Such a high density of pigment there. Right, so what should we do to play? I think with the wisteria. So we've got, again, complementary. I think it'd be quite fun again if we play, rather than with the Turner's yellow, I think if we get a little bit of the brilliant orange and see what happens with some brilliant orange, what it does. Just to see a kind of complementary tone. So suddenly it is so much warmer, redder. The red tones of the orange really bring out the beauty of that lovely wisteria colour. Oh, that's so fun. I think it'd be quite nice to see actually, we could tone it down with the blue. Why don't we play a little bit with the vivid blue, and also why don't we add a red just to kind of really push the boat out. So if we take some of this vivid blue we mixed earlier with some of the wisteria, just makes this kind of neon indigo. So yeah, with the blue it just completely cools it down. It almost returns it to lavender. So if, say, you had the wisteria and the vivid blue, you probably wouldn't need the lavender. You can just make it so easily. But let's try it. Let's squeeze a bit more out. Why don't we try... So that was with the vivid blue, just so we remember. Why don't we now experiment with the wisteria and a red? So we're running out of space here. So this is the Rose Doré, which we're going to be using next. This is a very high pigment red. But let's just see what happens. So it gets into that kind of botanical territory. It takes red very well. It really holds its own. It doesn't get lost. It keeps that kind of beautiful wisteria pigment tone. I think that's a really gorgeous purple. I think it kind of warms up very easily, but also the cooler colour with the with the vivid blue, just felt like it really, really toned itself down. Lovely. Okay, so the next colour, Rose Doré. I'm very excited to explore this new red. It looks very vibrant. I've only really been using Rose Madder, so I feel like this could be a very exciting replacement for the Rose Madder. It feels quite transparent actually. Oh, lovely. So let's add a little bit of white. Let's just sort of experiment here and see what kind of rose tone we can get. I mean, yeah, very botanical pink there. The exact shade of a rose immediately. Or perhaps a blush of a kind of cheek in a portrait. Yeah, a really, really just beautiful rose immediately, true to the name. So yeah, gorgeous. And you could obviously use some variations on that if you had more time. So let's play with the colour just to see what it could do. So we've been working with a lot of purples. I feel like quite comfortable in purple. I would like to see what happens with the rose if I make it more orange. She's got the lovely peaches here from the brilliant orange. So if we perhaps add, let's try the Turner's yellow here and just see what happens when we get a little bit of the rose with the Turner's yellow. So the smallest bit, or a little bit of white going in there, but that's not too bad. So you kind of immediately have like a kind of gorgeous coral yellow. Really warm, like liquid gold. And if we just steal a little bit more red, let's make it kind of punch it up a bit. Just to compare that to the brilliant orange tones we're mixing. The rose really is so gentle, it just harmonises beautifully. It doesn't dominate like some of the other more opaque colours. Oh, that's a gorgeous, gorgeous colour from that Turner's yellow there. I'd be quite interested to see what happens if we mix it with something very random. Perhaps the moss green. Do we maybe get some more moss green? Not maybe perhaps two colours you'd think of blending together. But let's just play and see what happens, because that's why we're here. Okay, so bit of the rose and moss green. So I think if you mixed it with a phthalo blue, you'd get just a very beautiful black, like your typical kind of red and blue make the most gorgeous brown. But I think with the moss, you almost get like a kind of mahogany transparent colour, because the moss and the rose are both very transparent. So I think that's really interesting just to see that stretched out. That's kind of a lovely glaze if you had that with a varnish. Really kind of a warm, deep, rich, transparent colour. You wouldn't think from moss you could get such a lovely burnished brown. And out of curiosity, if we do add a little bit of the phthalo blue red shade, which we were talking about earlier, because it is red, I feel like it is made to make the most lovely deep shadow purple. Yeah, look at that, immediately. So there is so much you can do with that rose. You just get the most gorgeous kind of lilac-y purple, midnight purple almost, and the more blue obviously you add, the kind of bluier it will be. But since we're playing with the rose, let's keep it quite warm. So yeah, I think it lends itself really beautifully to the other colours. It kind of, with the transparency, it keeps it holding as much light as possible, which I find kind of quite fascinating really. So finally we have cadmium green, our last colour of the collection, which immediately strikes itself as a high chroma colour, a very dominant green. I think this is going to be a perfect base for any greens. I think there's so much we're going to be able to do with this green. So since it's next to the rose, why don't we just have a little play? Obviously adding white would probably get like your lovely kind of buttery pale lime, which we can try, and then try it with the rose as well. Bit of white there. So yeah, let's see. So yeah, a little bit of white would make, yeah, immediately you just have, you know, perfect lime. Fetch me a margarita. Beautiful. But just to be curious, say if we add some of the rose, what happens with the cadmium green? I have some other cadmiums. Maybe we could do a little colour test for all of the cadmiums. That could be quite fun. So yeah, let's get some rose. Let's get some cadmium. See what kind of colour we can make. Ooh, okay, very unexpected. Wow. Okay, so that's a really beautiful, almost like golden green. Was not expecting that. God, there's so much yellow in that. Okay, again, it really responds to the yellow and the green. I'd be quite actually fascinated to see what would happen if we added a little bit of vivid blue to that cadmium green. Just because, again, we're working with such electric colours, I think this could make a very... Oh my God, look at that. Okay, that green positively glows. And actually it does take over the blue a bit, so you need quite a lot of blue. Gosh, though, look at that. Oof. Two ends of the spectrum there. You have a very earthy, muted green, and then you can have an electrifying neon turquoise green very easily. Oh, that's so interesting to see the spectrum. I mean, I could be playing with these for all day, quite happily. I mean, the key thing about the cadmium green is it's warm. There's a lot of yellow in it. It feels very kind of like friendly, like it's not, it wants to liven up any colour you mix it with. And I can quite happily say that I don't use many greens. So this would be a really comfortable one, I think, to like use as a bouncing in, as a baseline for like a limey green to play with, particularly in the summer. It just feels so fresh. This is so interesting because the Tunbridge Wells oil range, it's named after the place where Michael Harding first developed his colours at the beginning of Michael Harding's journey. So all of these colours feel so fresh, so vibrant. They're very opaque. They're really kind of full of pigment, exactly what you'd expect of a Michael Harding collection. I'm really happy. I'm not disappointed at all with this collection. It feels like there is so much paint here, so much pigment to work with. I think I'll have to refer to my colour wheel more to kind of really get into the science of the mixing. But just a really beautiful range of spectrum colours. It's really exciting to use. I can't wait to get to know them more. Okay, so 10 very different colours here from Michael Harding's new collection, full of pigment. They are buttery. You can tell that they are consistently of the high quality that we have come to expect from Michael Harding, my favourite brand to use when it comes to oil painting. I'm really excited as well to experiment mixing them together. I was really shocked at some of the results we got from mixing quite random colours. I feel like this is quite a playful set, quite bold colours. You can really see how in releasing these first 10, the Tunbridge Wells collection, they are named after where Michael Harding first started mixing and inventing his collection of oils 40 years ago. So it does feel like a very playful collection of paint. Like it feels like there's something for everybody here. You have some transparent colours, but also lots of opaque, juicy, summery, playful colours to mix. And if you're looking to expand your practice, maybe you want to explore a new range of colours, but you're not really sure how to get into it, I highly recommend starting with this Tunbridge Wells set because it's just fun. So I hope you've enjoyed watching. Please do like and subscribe. Any comments below, we'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much for watching the experimenting, playful mixing that we've just done. So it was great fun. I hope you've enjoyed it. Bye guys.